The United Nations General Assembly, once imagined as a stage for peace, diplomacy, and multilateral cooperation. But in September 2025, it became something else, a battleground of narratives, humiliation, silence, and resistance. Donald Trump stood at the podium for nearly an hour. He did not address the world, he berated it. He called Europe suicidal for opening borders. He mocked climate change as a hoax. He warned of Sharia law overtaking the West, and he told entire nations they were going to hell. Minutes later, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa rose to speak about Gaza, about genocide, about justice. His mic was cut. And as dozens of nations called for a two-state solution, Palestinian leaders were barred from entering the UN chamber, forced to speak through video screens. So the question becomes, who truly gets to speak for the world, and who is silenced? Donald Trump's speech was extraordinary, not for its length, but for its fury. 58 minutes of insults, warnings, and attacks. He ridiculed European nations for open border policies, calling them an act of suicide. He claimed migrants were destroying heritage, bringing chaos, eroding sovereignty. He mocked climate action as nothing more than a green scam, declaring climate change a hoax and dismissing decades of scientific consensus. He warned that Sharia law and cultural collapse awaited those who refused to tighten borders. And he went further, attacking the very organization that hosted him. He told the UN it was failing, that its multilateralism was broken, that only nations putting themselves first would survive. Trump was not just speaking policy, he was performing dominance. It was less diplomacy, more campaign rally, aimed at the global stage. Yet beneath the show was a strategy: redefine the rules, humiliate rivals, destabilize consensus. But if Trump got nearly an hour to thunder, others did not get the same courtesy. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa stepped to the podium with a different message. He condemned Israel's war in Gaza. He called it genocide. He demanded a two-state solution, East Jerusalem as capital, and adherence to international law. But after about 5 minutes, the microphone went dead. His speech silenced.
Its microphone has been cut off.
Whether technical error or deliberate act, the symbolism was deafening. Trump could berate nations for nearly an hour, but Ramaphosa, speaking for the Palestinians, was cut short. This was more than a glitch. It showed whose voices the system amplifies and whose voices it mutes. Meanwhile, momentum was building outside the spotlight. A high-level conference on the two-state solution convened with surprising strength. France, Canada, Australia, Portugal, the UK, and dozens more formally recognized Palestinian statehood. 142 of 193 UN members backed a declaration urging time-bound steps for both Israel and Palestine to exist side by side. Yet Palestinian leaders were denied physical entry into the UN chambers. They spoke instead through video calls, their voices mediated by screens, not presence. Blurred interview, diplomat. It was surreal. A global majority agrees, but the very people at the heart of the conflict were barred from entering the room. Recognition without representation. Statehood affirmed, but voices restricted. Symbolic victory shadowed by procedural exclusion. This year's UNGA revealed not just policy divides, but narrative wars. Trump, borders, sovereignty, hoax. Ramaphosa, genocide, justice, statehood. The UN Secretary General, warning of reckless disruption. And nations split, not just on solutions, but on what is real. Climate change, hoax or emergency. Migration, crisis or inevitability. Gaza, self-defense or war crime. In this clash, words are weapons, silence is power, presence is privilege. And the General Assembly becomes not just a stage of diplomacy, but an arena of truth versus denial. The stakes are immense. If world leaders treat the UN as theater, not forum, then multilateral norms collapse. If climate science is dismissed, the planet itself suffers. If genocide is silenced, justice itself is eroded. And if the majority of nations are denied equal voice, legitimacy itself fractures. At UNGA 2025, we saw two realities. Trump, commanding the stage with fury. Ramaphosa, cut short for speaking uncomfortable truths. Dozens of nations declaring statehood for Palestine, while its leaders were barred from the room. And through it all, the fight over who gets to define borders, truth, and justice. This is not only about speeches, it's about survival. The world must now choose. Will it allow fear, spectacle, and silence to shape the future? Or will it build a system where every voice counts, every truth matters, and every nation has its place?